I took a solo hiking trip last October to clear my head. 3 days, 2 nights. No contact, no emails, no noise. Just trees, wind, and my own breath in the cold air. The trail was an old logging route, rarely used anymore. I'd found it on a hiker's forum, one of those off-the-grid recommendations with comments like, "Zero cell reception, bring a map." Exactly what I needed. I parked at the dirt pull-off just after noon and hiked in with my gear. The forest swallowed me quickly. No sound but the soft crunch of leaves underfoot. I moved deeper and deeper, following a path that barely looked like one anymore. Just a thin scar between the trees. By late afternoon, I'd made it about 10 miles in. I found a decent spot in a shallow valley near a dry creek bed. Sheltered, quiet, and far enough from any kind of civilization to make me feel like the last person on Earth. That first night was uneventful, but I barely slept. Not because of fear, just the kind of nerves you get when you're alone in the middle of nowhere, and every sound is suddenly louder. The wind in the trees, a squirrel darting across the leaves, the occasional owl call. But around 3 a.m. I heard something else. Steps. Not animal steps, too heavy. Rhythmic. Careful, like someone trying to stay quiet. I sat up, heart pounding. My hand went to the knife I kept near my sleeping bag. I turned off my headlamp and listened, holding my breath. The steps circled the tent once, then stopped. I didn't move, didn't even blink. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Eventually, I must have passed out from sheer exhaustion. In the morning, I unzipped the tent and looked around. Nothing, no prints in the dirt, no broken branches. I told myself I must have been dreaming. Maybe I imagined it. Lack of sleep, nerves, whatever. I kept hiking. Day 2 was colder, the forest darker. The trees felt closer, like they leaned in just slightly. I pushed deeper, though. Found a ridge with a decent view and set up camp again, this time against a large boulder, hoping to feel a little less exposed. That evening, while boiling water, I noticed something. A small stack of rocks near the edge of camp. 5 of them, carefully balanced. I hadn't seen them when I arrived. I walked over. They were fresh. The leaves beneath them were still green and wet, not crushed or dried like they would have been if the pile had been there for long. Someone had been here. Again, I tried to explain it away. Maybe another hiker had passed through recently. Maybe I just missed it. That night, I barely slept. I kept my hatchet in my hand inside the sleeping bag. Around midnight, the silence shifted again. You know that eerie quiet, where even the bugs stop? The kind that makes your ears ring? Then I heard it. A slow, deliberate step. Then another. Closer. I didn't breathe. My tent rustled slightly, just a faint pressure, like a finger dragging across the fabric. Then nothing. I stayed frozen for what felt like hours. Eventually the sky lightened. Dawn. When I stepped out, my stomach turned. Hanging from a branch just outside the tent was my camp mug. I had left it inside my pack, and on the ground, barely visible in the morning light, was a footprint. Larger than mine. Deeper. Facing the tent, I packed everything in a blur, skipped breakfast, and hiked faster than I ever have in my life. I didn't stop for water. I didn't take breaks. I just moved, checking behind me every few minutes, sure I'd see someone in the trees. But I never did. I made it back to my car by mid-afternoon. The lot was empty, just my car sitting under a gray sky. Relieved, I threw my pack in the trunk and climbed into the driver's seat. Then I saw it. Something on my dashboard. A Polaroid photo. Me. Asleep in my tent. Taken from just a few feet away. I stared at it for a long time. My hand trembled as I started the engine. I didn't stop driving until I was back in cell range, back in a place with noise and people and light. I never reported it. What would I even say? Someone followed me in the woods, but I never saw their face. It's been months now. I haven't been camping since. But sometimes, when I take the trash out late at night or walk to my car in the early morning, I feel it again. That presence, that silence, like I'm not alone. And somewhere, out there, someone still has my photo. I like hiking alone. Most people think it's weird or dangerous, but I've always preferred the quiet. Just me, the trail, and the forest. No small talk, no schedules, just walking, breathing, existing. Last summer, I took a few days off work and drove out to a long, mostly unmarked trail in the Appalachians. It wasn't on any tourist maps, just something I found in a dusty hiking forum where people trade info like treasure. They called it the ridge spine because it followed a narrow stretch of elevated terrain with steep drops on either side. No shelters, no designated campsites, pure backcountry. Perfect. The first day went as planned. The trail was barely visible under overgrown grass and wet leaves. I followed the ridge for about 11 miles and set up camp near a fallen pine. It was hot, the air thick with the smell of moss and bark. I didn't see anyone all day. No hikers, no campers, not even animal tracks. But I did find something strange. Around mid-afternoon, just before setting up camp, I spotted something in the trees a little off the trail. Bright red, unnatural. I stepped off the path to check it out. It was a child's rain boot. Just one. It was sitting upright on a rock, perfectly balanced as if placed there on purpose. There was no trail nearby, no clearing, no way a kid would have wandered out here. The boot was clean. New looking. I stared at it for a while, then walked away. I told myself someone dropped it. Somehow. That was the only explanation that made sense. That night, I didn't sleep well. The woods were too quiet. The next morning, I packed up early and kept going. I figured if I covered more ground, I'd get cell service sooner. Around noon, I found the second thing. A photo, pinned to a tree with a rusted nail. It was black and white, curled at the edges. Looked like a photo from the 60s or 70s. Faded, grainy. It showed a man standing in front of a cabin. His face was slightly blurred, like he moved when the shutter clicked. But in the window behind him, barely visible, was a woman. Her mouth was wide open, her face twisted in fear or pain. I didn't touch it. I just stared for a long time. Then I kept walking. By mid-afternoon, I started hearing noises, snapping branches just off trail. Once, something that sounded like quiet whistling, but every time I stopped to listen, nothing. The forest didn't feel empty anymore. That night, I made camp earlier than usual, close to a rock wall that backed up against the ridge. At least no one or nothing could approach from that side. While collecting kindling, I found the third thing, a notebook. Weather-stained and swollen with damp. Someone had wedged it under a tree root like they wanted to hide it but not bury it. Every page was filled with messy, frantic writing. Sentences overlapping, words scratched out, rewritten, circled. Most of it didn't make sense. Ramblings about being watched, about the trees moving wrong, about voices in the soil. But one line was written over and over, "Do not look behind you." I dropped the notebook. I couldn't stop thinking about that sentence, especially as night fell. Every sound outside my tent felt closer. Every creak of a branch felt like someone inching forward. I didn't sleep. I just lay there, frozen, until the sky turned pale gray. When I finally unzipped the tent, I noticed something off. Someone, or something, had stacked stones near the fire pit. 4 of them. Small, clean. Each one painted with a different symbol in what looked like charcoal. I hadn't touched those rocks. I hadn't even seen them before. That was it. I was done. I packed fast, stuffed gear in at random, and got moving. But as I walked, I noticed something else. Every mile or so, I found another stone, always in my path. Same size, same charcoal symbols. I never saw or heard anyone. But the placement was deliberate. It was for me. Each stone felt like a message. We know where you are, and we're getting closer. When I finally reached my car just before sunset, I was soaked in sweat, dirt-covered, barely breathing right. The lot was empty. Just my car. I threw my bag in and got behind the wheel. I was about to start the engine when I noticed something strange. There was dirt on the inside of the windshield. 4 smudges, fingerprints, right in front of the driver's seat. I never saw a face, never heard a voice, but something out there watched me, left things for me, followed me. I haven't gone hiking since, and sometimes when I pass a park or see trees lining the road, I swear, I see a small rock on the ground, painted black, just waiting. I'm not a professional climber or some thrill seeker. I just like solitude. The more remote, the better. So when I found a topo map showing an unnamed peak in a rarely hiked corner of the national forest, I knew I had to go. No trails, no roads nearby, just a faint game path that wound upward through thick forest and then nothing. Exactly what I needed. I planned carefully. 3-day trip, GPS, physical maps, extra food, everything. I even left my route with a friend. I wasn't trying to be reckless. I just wanted to stand on a mountaintop and hear nothing but wind. The first day was tough. The incline started almost immediately, and the trees were dense, pines mostly, but also stretches of gnarled oak and birch that looked older than they had any right to be. The forest floor was uneven, covered in soft moss and the bones of fallen branches. I didn't see anyone, not even footprints. That evening, I camped by a dry creek bed and made a small fire. The silence was heavy, but not empty. Just after dusk, I thought I heard something up the hill, a sharp crack, like a branch snapping underfoot. I turned off my headlamp and listened. Nothing. Maybe a deer, maybe the forest settling. I tried to ignore it. The next morning, fog hung low between the trees. I hiked in silence, hours passing like minutes. The sun didn't cut through until late morning, when the slope finally began to level. I knew I was getting close to the peak. That's when I saw it. A silhouette. Far above me, maybe 300 meters from the summit ridge. A human figure, still as stone, standing right on the crest of the peak. I stopped cold. It was too far to make out details, just the shape of someone upright, looking out over the valley. But no one should have been there. This place wasn't listed in any trail guide. No signs, no markers, no cabins. I hadn't seen a soul in 2 days. I raised my hand and waved. The figure didn't move. I kept going. Slowly. 10 minutes later, I looked up again. The ridge was empty. Gone. At the summit, there were no tracks, no flattened grass, no sign anyone had ever stood there. The wind picked up. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, my eyes playing tricks, but something felt off. The ground here was dry and brittle, like no one had stepped on it in years. I stayed up there for a while, trying to enjoy it, trying to feel proud. But something gnawed at me. I didn't feel alone anymore. I descended the other side, thinking maybe I'd camp in a sheltered glade lower down. But after a couple hundred meters, I found something that stopped me. A pile of stones, neatly stacked, like a cairn. But not for wayfinding. This was tucked between trees, not on any path. At the base of the stones, half buried in dirt, was an old wool glove. Child-sized, damp, moldy. No reason for it to be here. No way a kid made it up this far. I walked past it faster now. By dusk, I found a small clearing, pitched my tent, and forced myself to eat. I didn't light a fire. That night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps. Not animal, crunching slowly through leaves and loose rock, deliberate, measured. I held my breath. My tent rustled in the wind. I waited for the sound to fade. It didn't. It stopped just outside. I reached for my knife and stayed completely still. Heart pounding so hard I felt it in my fingertips. Then, silence. No retreating steps. Nothing. Eventually, after what felt like hours, I fell asleep from exhaustion. At dawn, I stepped outside. No tracks, nothing disturbed, but my walking stick, something I'd leaned against a tree just before bed, was gone. I scanned the woods in every direction. Nothing. I packed up in record time and started back down the mountain, this time sticking closer to the ridgeline to avoid the deeper woods. About halfway down, I found something else. Tied to a tree branch with string. My walking stick. Wrapped tightly around the top was a strip of red fabric. I don't carry red fabric. I left it there. Didn't stop again. By late afternoon, I saw my car through the trees, parked exactly where I left it, alone on the gravel pullout. But when I reached it, I noticed something odd. The passenger side door was unlocked. I always lock my car. Always. I opened the door slowly. Nothing seemed touched, nothing missing. Except on the passenger seat, there was a single pine cone. Fresh, still sticky with sap. I didn't bring any with me. I don't know who or what I saw on that summit. I don't know who moved through the forest at night or how they moved so quietly. But I haven't been back in the woods since. And sometimes when I drive past the edge of the forest near home, I see something in the tree line. A figure, still as stone, watching.